Hi guys, welcome to another episode of U.S. History with Lennox. And today we're continuing our discussion on the Cold War. Now, following World War II, I think the biggest fear that Americans had was the spread of communism throughout the world. That's why our foreign policy was focused on containing communism wherever it previously existed. It started with President Truman and the Truman Doctrine in the late 1940s, where he said the United States would work to protect Western Europe from the spread of communism. As we move into the 1950s, President Eisenhower is going to have to deal with the spread of communism into North Korea and the Korean War. He is going to introduce the Eisenhower Doctrine, which will take the same principles of the Truman Doctrine, but now extend our influence over Asia as well. And that's where we're going to find ourselves as we go into the 1950s, looking to prevent the spread of communism beyond where it already existed, the Soviet Union, China, and North Korea. Well, where this is going to take us today is to Indochina. Following World War II, France was attempting to regain some of its colonial holdings it had lost during the war. One of those was the territory of Indochina. The problem was that native Vietnamese and Cambodians who lived in Indochina didn't want the French to come back. They wanted their independence. So a young leader by the name of Ho Chi Minh is going to request of the Allies that Indochina be able to hold on to its independence, keep the French out. One small problem: Ho Chi Minh was a communist, and America was working to stop the spread of communism, not give them more territory. So the French are going to go back in, and what they're going to face is a revolution. Ho Chi Minh and his Viet Minh guerrillas are going to lead a revolt against the French government in Indochina. Now, the United States is going to support the French with military aid, primarily armaments. We're not going to send troops in. We refuse to do that. And not unsurprisingly, the Soviet Union and China are going to support the Viet Minh and Ho Chi Minh. Well, what's going to happen is the French are going to lose. In 1954, they are going to surrender at Dien Bien Phu. At that point, they request from Eisenhower, "Send us more troops, we need help." And Eisenhower said no. Without those troops, there's no way the French can hold on to all of Indochina. So what's going to happen at the Geneva Convention in 1954 is we're going to see French give up its holdings in Indochina and new countries being created, including Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia. The problem we have, or the question that needs to be answered: will Vietnam be a communist nation? Well, what's going to end up happening is, much like Korea, Vietnam is going to be divided. North Vietnam will be led by Ho Chi Minh, a communist ruler. And South Vietnam is going to be led by Ngo Dinh Diem, an anti-communist, which is great for us. The United States is actually going to send $1 billion of aid into South Vietnam to help them build a stable anti-communist state. Remember, always said, communist feeds on poverty. So the idea was, we'll send financial aid, very similar to what we did with the Marshall Plan following World War II. Now we're sending that financial aid into South Vietnam. Now, of course, Eisenhower is going to support Diem, but what you need to know about Diem is he was not a good guy. But we thought, at least he's not a communist or a Marxist, so that's why he had our support. That doesn't mean he was the right man for the job. But our biggest fear is if South Vietnam falls to communism, that whole domino theory comes back and bites us. Remember, the domino theory says if one country falls to communism, the rest of Southeast Asia will follow. We've already seen China and Korea go. Now we're starting to lose Vietnam, and we're going to fight to keep it. And Americans were behind this at this point. This is a map that was put out by an American magazine demonstrating how easy it would be for communism to spread if we just let it go free in Asia. And that's the last thing we wanted to do. This is what leads to the Vietnam War. So, looks like we're fighting again. There are a few key figures you absolutely need to know when talking about the Vietnam War. I've already introduced you to Ho Chi Minh. He was the president of North Vietnam, and he is seen as a hero to most of the Vietnamese people. That's going to play a key role in this war. William Westmoreland is going to be the American commander in Vietnam. He is going to paint a picture for the American people, misleading what was really going on over there. Lyndon B. Johnson, the president in the 1960s, during the majority of our involvement in the war, is actually going to escalate the number of troops that we send into Vietnam. Robert McNamara, the U.S. Secretary of Defense, and he also is going to mislead Americans into believing that we were actually winning this war. Richard Nixon will come in after the election of 1968, the latter stages of the war, with promises to get us out of Vietnam. And of course, I already brought up Ngo Dinh Diem, the president of South Vietnam, who, not a good guy, and had a lot of corruption and harsh standards that are going to lead a lot of people in Vietnam to turn towards the Viet Cong and Ho Chi Minh. So it really started for us under the Kennedy administration. After the division between North and South Vietnam, we sent in the financial aid. JFK is going to send military aid in the form of military advisors. They're not there to fight. They're there to train. They're there to advise. He started sending these men in 1961, and by 1963, there were nearly 16,000 troops on the ground. Not fighting, just advising. In 1961, in order to defeat the Viet Minh and the Viet Cong, the United States is going to approve the use of Agent Orange. This was a defoliant. What it would do was basically kill all the leaves on the trees, so it would be more difficult to hide in these jungle-rich areas. It's also going to cause a lot of health problems moving forward. There were problems in South Vietnam from the beginning because of its leadership. The people of South Vietnam hated their president. He was corrupt. He didn't govern in the best interest of the people, but did it instead for the best interest of himself. He was disliked because of his discrimination against the Buddhist population, a very large population in Vietnam. You even saw protests such as this picture in the bottom left, where a Buddhist monk set himself on fire to protest the rule of Diem. This is not a good guy. If people are setting themselves on fire, he is going to be overthrown and assassinated November 1st and 2nd of 1963. Now, this is going to happen with the approval of Washington. We weren't directly involved, but we didn't stop it either. It was just a few weeks later that JFK will be assassinated. No, the two aren't connected, but timing is everything. The next year, President Johnson in August will announce that 2 American destroyers had been fired upon, attacked by North Vietnamese ships. He said it occurred in the Gulf of Tonkin, which sat right off the coast of North Vietnam. He said the USS Maddox and the USS Turner Joy had been fired upon unprovoked. And as a result, he had ordered American aircraft to fly attack missions into North Vietnam. Keep in mind, these ships were right off the coast of North Vietnam. I guess they were just advising. Actually, what they were doing was what was known as the DeSoto Patrol. Both of these ships were equipped with electronic monitoring devices, and it's believed that we were monitoring the North Vietnamese. Spying. Due to the attack in the Gulf of Tonkin, Congress is going to pass what's known as the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution, basically giving Johnson authorization to use force to defend the American forces in Vietnam. Remember, we have 16,000 advisors there in country. When they passed this resolution, August of 64, basically what Congress did was hand over war powers to the President of the United States. He was given a blank check to fight the war in Vietnam. And he didn't have to go to Congress anymore for any more authorizations. He could send U.S. troops into battle without ever having a declaration of war. One of the first major campaigns for the United States in the Vietnam War is what's known as Operation Rolling Thunder. It was a 3-year bombing campaign conducted against the North Vietnamese. The purpose of this campaign was to stop the support that the North Vietnamese were giving to South Vietnamese guerrillas. This was another fighting force in South Vietnam that supported Ho Chi Minh and the communist rule of the entire country. This one operation will become the most intense air-to-ground battle that will ever be waged during the Cold War era. Now, I mentioned a group of South Vietnamese guerrillas who were fighting against the democratic control of South Vietnam. They're known as the Viet Cong. They lived in South Vietnam. They're also known as the NLF. They were South Vietnamese communists who fought for Vietnamese unification, but on the side of North Vietnam. So not only were we fighting against the North Vietnamese, we were also fighting South Vietnamese within country that were fighting from the inside out, if you will. And they had a lot of advantages in fighting in South Vietnam. Number one, it was their home. Home field advantage is always something you have to take into consideration. They knew the landscape, they knew the rivers, the lakes, and everything like that. Also, due to the location, they could find refuge in places like Cambodia and Laos, or within South Vietnam itself. It was very difficult to fight on them. On top of that, they could count on the support of a lot of the local population. You see, Vietnam, we were fighting to keep communism from spreading there, but locally, I don't know that the people really cared about communism coming in. Not like Americans did. One way that the North Vietnamese supported the Viet Cong was through the Ho Chi Minh Trail. This was a path that ran from North Vietnam to South Vietnam, but it went through Laos and Cambodia. And because of that, U.S. forces could not go in there because the Gulf of Tonkin resolution only gave Johnson power to fight in Vietnam. So how do you stop a fighting force like the Viet Cong, who can easily hide, are getting easily supplied by the North Vietnamese, and are also being supported by the local people that you are supposedly defending from the spread of communism? Well, that's what we're going to talk about in our next video, Vietnam Part 2. Guys, what you're going to find in our next video is that while Americans absolutely supported our entry into Vietnam to stop the spread of communism in the early 60s, as the war went on, that support is going to dwindle. Okay, so that's your introduction to the Vietnam War. Hopefully you learned a little something. If you missed something, you can always rewind and go back again. If you liked it, give me that thumbs up. And as always, if you want to subscribe, I'm not going to tell you not to. But until next time, I thank you for watching. Bye-bye.